nothing's happening, and you are safe.
In my head.
It is the absolute worst feeling. You're just going about your day, doing some shopping, then all of a sudden you're flashed back, you're in the middle of that horrifying event that happened to you, and you're trying to figure out, how am I supposed to go about my day now? How am I supposed to finish shopping? Maybe you think about leaving the store, just leaving your shopping cart there. Flashbacks are terrible, so let's give you some tips so that you can stop PTSD flashbacks right now. Interestingly enough, right before I came out here, I was looking to see what can you do about PTSD flashbacks, and one of the things that I found was that there is an element in cannabis, in marijuana, that will calm down a flashback, that will reduce the frequency of flashbacks. And if you are prescribed this by a doctor, I would recommend at least considering it, trying it. However, I am not a doctor. I can't tell you what to do. This has to be something that was medically prescribed to you. And as well, I want to caution against recreationally using marijuana because it can bring early onset of psychosis symptoms in people who are genetically susceptible to that. So it's an option if it's something that you've been medically prescribed. Now, when we're talking about flashbacks, we're talking about that memory that kind of like jolts into your brain very suddenly. You didn't expect it, you didn't want to have it, and now you're in panic mode, you're freaking out, your fight or flight system is on. And so we can't necessarily stop the memory from happening, it's kind of automatic, but there are some things surrounding the memory that we can fix. The thing that you're probably trying to escape when you're having a PTSD attack, when you're having these flashbacks that come in, is that feeling of panic, that feeling of fear, that feeling that something's about to happen to you. And so if you're aware that that's happening, what you can do is to work to reduce that feeling and remind yourself that right now you are safe. Even though you have this memory, even though your body's telling you you're not safe, if you look around, if you objectively connect with what's going on in your environment, nothing's happening and you are safe. So remind yourself of that in the moment. I am safe, I am okay. And maybe if you're with somebody that you feel safe with, bring them closer to you. Ask them for reassurance. Something else that you can do that has helped me personally many times in the middle of a flashback, particularly emotional flashbacks where I don't necessarily know what the memory was, I'm just freaking out, is to slow down my breathing, to be mindfully aware of how my breathing is, to be aware of my posture. What happens is when we go through a flashback and we're having these panicky feelings is our heart rate goes up, and that's interacting with our amygdala, which is setting off the fear in our brain. And so to mitigate some of that fear, we can't really do much about the amygdala, but we can slow down our breathing, and our breathing controls our heart rate to some extent. So when we mindfully slow it down carefully, of course, if you're in the middle of a panic attack, this may not be a great idea. You may want to just seek medical assistance. But if you're not full on freaking out at 100%, be mindful of your breathing. Be mindful of your posture, open up, give your diaphragm some room to move, and then slow down your breathing. Slow it down carefully, gently, while repeating those thoughts that I am safe, I am okay, with that person next to you that makes you feel okay. And you will start to see these panicky symptoms that are freaking you out go down, and you'll start to return to a more regular arousal where there's not so much anxiety. One other thing that you may want to do is to get away from whatever's triggering your flashback in the first place. So if you know your triggers, you know what's going on, get out of the environment, get out of the situation. This is what we call an avoidance strategy. It may actually be what helped you in the middle of your trauma. Maybe you were able to run away. That's the flight part of fight or flight. And so if you can do that, you may be able to temporarily give yourself some relief and to calm down. But this is an avoidance strategy, and an avoidance strategy will not take care of the root issue of PTSD. For that, we need an approach strategy. When we're experiencing PTSD and we're experiencing a flashback, what's happening is we're going back to the original moment when we experienced something traumatic and we had a memory encoded during that moment, encoded with this intense, fearful emotion. And unfortunately, when we have that level of stress in our body malfunctions a little bit and it encodes the memory slightly incorrectly. It fragments the memory, and so we can get triggered by things that aren't an exact replica of the situation that we went through, but things that might just kind of resemble what we went through. So for instance, right now above me, I'm hearing a plane. If I was involved in a plane crash, just hearing the plane might be enough to trigger PTSD. I'm not actually in a plane right now. The plane's far away. It's not even anywhere near me, but it's enough to, the sound of it is enough to remind me of the PTSD. And I might not even remember that that was something that I went through. That could have been something that I went through when I was 10 years old, and I might think that I've moved on from it. But this fragmented memory of the sound of the airplane causes me to have my anxiety spike and to freak out. Now, don't forget, your memories can be encoded in a lot of different ways. You have 5 senses, for example, and so maybe the smell of coffee reminds you of a time that you were sexually assaulted, or maybe seeing the color red reminds you of something that an attacker had that they were wearing, a particular color of red. Or we have sounds, as I mentioned. Maybe there's a song that plays that was playing when something happened to you. Maybe you move your arm in a particular position, which is the position that you were in when something happened to you. Maybe there's a particular taste because you were sucking on a candy when you were attacked. Whatever it is, these little fragmented pieces of the memory can be what's setting off your flashback and triggering you into PTSD. So if we want to stop these flashbacks from repeating over and over again, we have to deal with that emotional charge that's attached to that fragmented memory. We have to approach it. We have to approach these feelings of panic, experience them, and then start to neutralize them so that whenever this memory comes up, we're not so panicked. And that's what lowering your breath is about. That's what telling yourself you're safe is about. That's what having safe people around is about. And of course, the best safe person that you can have around is a therapist who specializes in trauma, who understands this, who can help you to feel better when you're in these situations. Once you've practiced exposing yourself to these feelings, exposing yourself to these thoughts and these situations in a safe environment over and over again, and you've neutralized that emotion, the frequency of the flashbacks will start to go down. You won't have them as much because your brain won't magnify them. It won't see them as so threatening, and it won't see them as something that you need to pay close attention to, thereby making your anxiety level rise so suddenly and so quickly. Now, there's an additional challenge for those of us who dissociate. That is known as the freeze response. And sometimes when we're in the middle of trauma, we can't do anything. We just freeze in place, we freak out. And what we do then is we dissociate and we start to detach from our body, we detach from reality and what's going on around us, and it's a way that we protect ourselves so that we don't have to fully take in this frightening, panicky situation that our body just cannot handle in the moment. However, when this comes back up during PTSD flashbacks, it gets in the way of us being able to correctly approach these flashbacks and manage them because we're not in our body and we're not able to calm our body down. This was a problem that I personally dealt with for years, and it made my life horrible because I would continue experiencing PTSD, not even knowing what PTSD was, and I was dissociating all the time, so I was not able to get things done. I wasn't motivated. I always felt tired. And so I want to help you with dissociation. By definition, dissociation is escaping your body, not staying present in your body when something traumatic is going on or when you're having a flashback. So what you need to do is to get back inside your body, and the way that we do that is through grounding. Grounding is really simple, though in practice it may be very difficult for some people, and this may be where a trauma specialist may be needed to help you with this. But grounding is simply getting back in touch with your environment. So feeling the way that your body feels. You know, for me, it helped a lot to feel my feet against the ground, what the bottom of my feet felt like touching against something. Again, you can use smells to trigger this. Smells are very powerful. So if you have a candy that you like, a candle, a perfume, a cologne, something of that nature, I apologize for the siren. But a siren will get you back in touch with your environment. Maybe something like music, for example, could be something that brings you back into your environment and helps you calm down. Practice doing this over and over and over again so that when you are dissociated, you can come back into your body. And once you're in your body, that's when you start to do those things that help you to calm down. The slowing down your breathing, telling yourself it's okay, and getting somebody else around that helps you to feel safe. And this is how you deal with PTSD flashbacks. You have to repeat this over and over and over again because you're reprogramming your mind to change the way that it thinks about this memory, to change the story that you have around what happened to you, and to neutralize that emotion that's causing you to feel so panicked in the first place. But it does take practice. It's not easy. You make mistakes along the way, and this is why the guidance of a therapist is really helpful. Now, there's There's many different therapies that you can do for trauma and PTSD and flashbacks. There's EMDR, somatic experiencing, DBT, among many other things that you can do. So if you go to see a therapist, talk with them, let them know that you're experiencing symptoms of trauma, and provided that they are a trauma specialist and they understand what trauma is, they should be able to help you and get you on the right path. I hope that something that I've said here has been helpful for you. If you want to learn more about mental health, head on over to youtube.com/RyanLiberty and hit subscribe. Special thank you to my patrons over on Patreon who helped make this video possible. If you want to support me on my mission of humanizing mental health, go on over to Patreon. I'll put the link in the description below. And now I'd love to hear from you. What are some tips that you have to help bring PTSD flashbacks down so that they're not so overwhelming and terrible? I know a lot of people have gone through this. Let's share our knowledge. Leave that down below in the comments below and we'll have a discussion. As always, thank you for joining me out here today, and I'll see you around next time.